Homeostasis, Homo sapien, homicide. Welcome back to Sound the Siren. I'm Xavier.
I'm Dylan. Welcome back with the third episode of the week that was. Today we have a special guest. Darcy, how are you?
Yeah, going good, mate. Not exactly enjoying my team North Melbourne's form at the moment, but I'll have to jump on the Brisbane bandwagon. Gotta love them.
Zabe, take it away.
Yeah, just quickly, a quick word from our sponsor, Pepsi. Complete legends, best tasting drink ever, and well done to them.
He's
Now,
actually using it in a
this is
bottle.
not a paid sponsorship. We're actually not getting paid, but still shout out to them.
Well, back to the action. Not the most intriguing week, boys. We had an extreme amount of blowouts, completely different to what I personally thought would happen. But I think this week will be completely different. It's been a difficult last 24 hours for us Melburnians, discovering 6 weeks of lockdown. So I think the footy will have additional viewers. Today, we'll go the round 5 review and then we'll look into this week's games.
Just quickly, there's a fair bit of off-field stuff that I wanted to talk to you a little bit about. Obviously, Collingwood were in the wars a little bit over the last couple of weeks. They had the side bottom incident where he was arrested and was with the police, went in the back of the cop car, and the De Goey incident where he got arrested for the indecent assault that occurred in 2015. I think they've got a rap sheet unlike many others, and in the words of Caroline Wilson, they had there's obviously a discipline issue going on in Collingwood. What do you guys think about that?
I'll say a couple of things. I think they just need to keep going with their footy. Just focus on the main thing. What happens off the field happens off the field. They can deal with it. Eddie Maguire's already said a few things about it, and I think he'll continue to handle it reasonably well.
To be fair, I don't reckon Eddie has handled it really well recently. He probably could handle it better, but I think it all comes down to his leadership. Like, he's got to be the one looked at because this has all happened under him, and he's supposed to be the president of the club, so he's got to represent him the best. But yeah, I don't know. I reckon it'll affect their footy a bit, missing 3 of their best players.
Yeah, I think with De Goey and obviously in a different headspace to perhaps what he'd like to be in their last game, and Jeremy Howe out and Sidebottom out, I think perhaps they could have got across the line if some of the stuff didn't happen over the week.
Before we get into the week 5 review, I forgot to mention a couple of things last week, and I'll ask Darcy this question. What do you think of the state of the game at the moment? Because I did say to Zave off camera that, there's been low scoring, maybe the skills are lacking a bit, but yeah, what's your take on the game at the moment? Entertaining, not entertaining?
It's a different brand, I reckon. Like, obviously, it's going to happen. They've had, a much worse preparation for the season, and then a lot of interruptions, having to travel for weeks at a time, and I don't know, shortened quarters as well probably doesn't help. You had an extra 4 or 5 minutes each quarter, and a lot more, I don't know, flow, momentum built up throughout it, so there's going to be a lot more scoring. Plus, most of the scoring usually comes like later when there's tiring, so I don't know, since it's shorter, they're not tiring as much, so there's no 6-goal fourth quarters anymore.
Sam McClure wrote an article entitled "The Camp That Shattered a Football Club," and it was detailing the Adelaide Football Club camp, the year after they made it to the grand final. And there was rumours, and it was stated in the article that they took the fears of the players and used them against them when they were at the camp. There's obviously not very good for players' mental health, and I think that's cost Adelaide in the future, in the years after that camp. What do you guys think about that?
It's definitely been reflected by like the outpouring of players just leaving the club. Like, it's been a lot of them recently, so I guess that obviously affected them there, and it's destroyed the culture, destroyed the camaraderie around the club, and it's sort of reflecting this season, I guess.
Yeah, I was going to mention this later on, Zave, but while we're on it, I did see Bryce Gibbs say something about how he's been at worse trips back in his Carlton days. Your take on that?
Yeah, I don't think any of the trips would have been quite as bad. Obviously, Carlton have had players leave as well, but not in the masses that Adelaide have had. And I think their playing group seems a little bit divided, and obviously it's showing in their football. It's not like Carlton's been a dominant team over the last 20-odd years, but yeah, I don't think any of the trips seem quite as bad.
Anything else to say, boys?
Just there was a good piece from Sam McClure, and I'd encourage everyone to give it a read.
Let's get into the round 5 review and let's talk about this mighty team here. Not to rub it in, Zave, but we played a good breed of football. Carlton, I was impressed with Will Setterfield. Hope Hanbury gets better as soon as possible.
Yeah, it was impressive from St Kilda. I wasn't very happy with the way that Carlton played. I think it was a lot closer than the scoreboard perhaps said.
Oh yeah, definitely.
There were a few things that cost Carlton in the end. Obviously, the matchups from Geary and Steele on Cripps and Doherty, they worked very well in the first quarter. Doherty still found his footy, but Geary kicked 2 goals in the first, and Cripps was shut out of the game for most of the first half. There are a few other things. There were mistakes that cost us from Doherty missing his slingshot goal in the first, just as we were starting to come back. Liam Jones turned it over twice in the middle of your forward 50. That led to 2 goals. Williamson kept losing his feet. But we actually outscored St Kilda in the second half. So I think it's just a few issues that led to our loss in the end. But well played from St Kilda, and unfortunately Carlton couldn't get the win.
Davey, what about Mitch McGovern and his role in the team? Do you think he needs to be doing a bit more? Do you reckon he needs to change the position? What do you reckon?
I think he is a forward. I think he does need to do more, though. He is our second highest paid player after Paddy Cripps, and I think, to be our second highest paid player, and he might even get dropped this week. The teams are yet to come out, but yeah, he's got to play better than he is at the moment.
He only had 5 kicks and 2 marks, no goals or points. So 2 tackles as well, not even having forward pressure. So I think he's got to start doing something at least.
Yeah, he hasn't been very impressive at all since he's come from Adelaide over here.
The next game on the Friday, I think the tip that most of us would have had wrong, I'm guessing, Collingwood versus Essendon. I know I tipped Collingwood. Jaden Stevenson, a standout for the Pies, and Howe's absence was obviously shown. They really struggled in the back half.
Yeah, I think I didn't have them winning, but obviously they played pretty well. Collingwood looked like they were going to run away with it in the first quarter, but obviously they lost, and a good win for Essendon and a bad loss for Collingwood.
Yeah, Dylan Shield really shone out in this game. He was really good, I found. But yeah, a lot of the performances from Collingwood were just not quite there, whereas Essendon, they all seemed to perform pretty well.
There was something interesting I saw in the post-game. Cale Hooker actually has his own winery, which I thought was quite interesting, and you can buy his wine if you want to.
Not too many sponsors.
Enough, obviously.
The next game on the Saturday, West Coast finally getting their first win since the restart. I tipped Sydney. It was a bit of a risk, but I'm glad the Eagles got the win, and they'll come back home strong with crowds, and I think they'll really make a playoff push. Or not a playoff, a finals push, rather.
Yeah, I tipped West Coast as well. They obviously won. They got an easy run in the next couple of weeks versus Adelaide and Fremantle, who are obviously the 2 teams at the bottom of the ladder, and they could be in the finals race and in the top 8 in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I thought the young Australian looked really, really good for them there, kicking 3 goals. He's looking exciting. Could take Darling or Kennedy's place, I guess.
Jake Waterman as well. I loved watching him as well. Geelong versus Gold Coast. I think it's fair to say that we're all going to miss Matty Rowell. Great young prospect, and his season's over. I know we're all disappointed.
Yeah, I think there were a few interesting parts in this game. I had Geelong winning as well. Actually, I had Geelong winning. I'm not sure if you did, but I had them winning. I think the King Blitzers was a good matchup that I wanted to see from the start of the game. I think that was quite an athletic battle, and I think Blitzers obviously got that one because his team won. But the other thing I found interesting, in Abbott's 350th, he kicked a drop punt from about 55 metres out. And I didn't know that his old legs had that in him, but it was a good goal. In the last quarter as well, suffering from fatigue.
Obviously, Gold Coast won't be as good without Matt Rowell, but I still reckon they could pull together a few wins, finish probably mid-table, 10th, 11th, around that spot, I reckon. Yeah, they got some good young players that I reckon will get for them.
Yeah, sorry, Darcy. I was just going to say they held their own pretty well after Matty Rowell's season was over. In the first 3 minutes, I think it was. So, yeah, until the last quarter, they were pretty solid. Bulldogs North Melbourne. Couldn't watch the next few games, so I'll let Darcy discuss his Kangas performance, but I don't think it was right for Cunnington to come back just yet.
Oh, he could hardly run. It was absolutely disgusting. I don't know who made that decision, but it was really bad. We piled on a few injuries there. I think Higgins injured his knee late and just wasn't looking very good for us. There was no real standouts. I'd probably say Jai Simpson was our best. I like the look of Curtis Taylor. He played really well there. But to be honest, the Bulldogs just tore us apart. They absolutely killed us. Josh Bruce, old Saints man, he was just couldn't stop him really.
Yeah, I was looking forward to this game all week, and obviously the Cunnington injury wasn't good for North Melbourne, and he sat out most of the game, even though he played. Josh Bruce, as he said, was back to his St Kilda form, kicking 6. Curtis Taylor was the Rising Star nominee. Got a 100 super coach as well, which was good for my team. But I think Ben Brown wasn't very good for them at all. He's a bit of a lead, mark and kick type of player, and when the forward entries aren't very good for North Melbourne, I don't think he's going to play very well. So it's not all his fault, but obviously he's down on a bit of form.
I must say, I reckon Todd Goldstein could be a shout for a sneaky All-Australian this year. He has been
he has been very good, but I think it's going to be tough for him going up against Gawn and Grundy, who are two of the better ruckmen we've seen since probably Dean Cox. So battle.
I think he's winning the headhouse advantage, and he's doing very well disposal-wise as well. He's kicked 2 goals last game, I think.
However, Timothy English wasn't actually that bad. He had 22 touches and keeps getting better and better by the week. However, he was killed in the ruck contest. But once he puts on a bit of size and a bit of weight, I think we'll start winning the ruck contest as well as finding the ball.
I'm pretty sure a young bloke, Tristan, I think it's Cherry. I reckon he played ruck the last quarter there. That's probably where Tim English got most of his headouts because Cherry only got 2 there. So I don't know, probably boosted up English's stats a bit there. He probably didn't have that good of a game, but going up against the second gamer, he can look pretty good.
I think Riley West was very good in that game. He was very competitive, and I think if he keeps playing like that, he might become one of my favourite players in the years to come. But I think, very promising for the Bulldogs with Bontempelli only having less than 15 possessions and only 1 clearance. Obviously, I think he's the best player in the game, but he was pretty much shut down for that game. I think it was Luke McDonald was tagging him. Obviously, he did a good job. But they stood up, the Bulldogs, and they won the game, even with Aaron Norton still to come back in and Bontempelli not playing very well. So well done to them.
I wasn't able to watch the next game, Brisbane Port, but I'm sure Das is happy with his new adopted team.
Gotta love Brisbane. You couldn't possibly name one player from Brisbane that you hate, I reckon.
Yeah, I think Brisbane's fast becoming one of my favourite teams as well. They got a fair few of my favourite players over there. Mitch Robinson, I think he's very funny and an old Carlton player. Charlie Cameron, Harris Andrews is one of my favourite players who I did want to touch on. He's in very good form as of late and kept one of the informed forwards to just 6 possessions in Charlie Dixon. And I think Luke Hodge was in the media saying that Harris Andrews is the best defender that he's played with. So that's obviously meaning a lot from coming from someone that's won premierships and played with people like Grant Birchall, Josh Gibson, and even Brian Lake.
And I guess we could talk about the 2020 Brownlow medalist, Lockie Neal. Absolutely killing it every week. Inside, you couldn't ask for more, to be honest. He's such a good player.
The next game, we'll go to the Sunday afternoon game, Adelaide versus Fremantle. Just before we get into this game, I've got a notification here on Adelaide, and Riley O'Brien just tweeted out an accidental post, and he called Nick Natanui lazy and unfit. So it'll be a good rivalry this week. I think Nick Nat will really want to show him off now.
That's very deliberate.
Is it wrong though?
I was watching Nick Nat last game. He wasn't too bad. He was.
I think Nick Nat's ruck work and his tap ruck work is never been in question, but I think he struggles to actually find the ball that much, and he doesn't take many marks. I know he took 3, not last week, but the week before, and that was quite outstanding for him. But I think perhaps he's a little bit overrated in my book, Nick Nat.
Yeah, I still enjoy watching him. So.
Fair.
The Melbourne-Richmond game, I did tip Richmond, but only in the last 5 minutes before the game. I was very happy with that tip. Tigers back on track, but I think they'll struggle interstate, and that's why I haven't tipped them this week. We'll get to that later, though.
Yeah, as you know, I'm not Richmond's biggest fan, so obviously I tipped Melbourne, but I think Melbourne were better than perhaps the score showed as well, similar to the Carlton St Kilda game. They kept turning the ball over when it mattered most, and Tom McDonald struggled to find the scoreboard. But yeah, I think they could have been better. But as you said, I think Richmond will struggle in the coming weeks. They've got Edwards, Hawley, Lynch, Cochin, Prestian, and Curvis and Asprey all to miss the following weeks. So I think they'll struggle to find wins. And when they're sitting just outside the 8, I think it's going to be a struggle for them for the rest of the year, maybe.
Yeah, I don't really see them finishing much higher than 6th or 7th this season, so it's going to be tough. They've no double chance, no home finals really. So that's usually what sort of pulls them through, I guess.
I think that's good for Brisbane and both Brisbane and GWS. They seem to be the two premier teams in the competition, with West Coast obviously struggling and Richmond's injuries. And yeah, Geelong obviously have been a bit on and off, and Collingwood with their off-field issues. So yeah, I think one of those two teams will win the premiership this year for mine.
That could be an exciting grand final, to be fair.
I'm excited to get through week 6's tips, so we'll just speed past this last game. Not many positives for the Hawks. GWS absolutely ran over them, but Harry Perryman is going to be a star, and I think very underrated in my books.
Yeah, I'm obviously a big fan of the GWS list. I think Josh Kelly was outstanding. Whitfield managed to hit his targets like always. Harry Perryman, as you said, was outstanding. One of my favourite players in the league, Nick Haynes, he kept finding the ball as he's been doing all year. I think he's a lock for All-Australian this year. Yeah, Jeremy Cameron found the scoreboard late, and Himmelberg and Finlayson did a lot of the scoring in the early stages of the game.
We'll get to this week. Tonight's game, we're recording on the Thursday, Geelong versus Brisbane. Should be a great matchup, and I think it's hard to tip against the Lions at the moment, but I do think the home advantage is assisting them, but nonetheless, they're proving themselves and emerging as a premier favourite, so I've got the Lions tonight.
Yeah, obviously Geelong's one of the better teams in the league, but as I was saying before, Brisbane is perhaps the best team in the league, so I'm going to go with Brisbane.
Jack Stephen got the axe as well, just thought I'd say. So.
Oof. Yeah, I'm going Brisbane by 16. It being at the SCG, a bit of a neutral spot for them. I don't see much of an advantage either way, but I just see Brisbane outmatching the Geelong Cats in basically every aspect, to be honest.
Collingwood versus Hawthorn, and I think I'm going to tip Hawthorn. Even though Collingwood, on paper, they probably still have the better list. A risky tip for me, but I think the loss of Jeremy Howe is, crucial for the Pies, and the Hawks can get over the line, even though there wasn't many positives for them.
That is a bold strategy, Cotton, but I'm still going to have to go with Collingwood. I think Hawthorn have been good in recent weeks. I think their game against Richmond was probably the best footy I've seen them play since they were winning premierships, but I think Collingwood's still got the better list and the better midfield. I did want to touch quickly on their midfield last week. I think they only had about 18 clearances, and Brodie Grundy had 10 of the 18. So I found that incredible for a team to have Pendlebury, Chalor, all those gifted midfielders, and still struggle to win the ball at the source. So what did you guys think about that?
Yeah, they just looked a bit weak at the contest, to be honest. When they got class like that, they should be absolutely smashing in the clearances. But Grundy, he's a really good player. You can't really look past him. He's just going to carry the load no matter what these midfielders are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Grundy, and he's still only 26, I think. Maybe I've got my stats wrong, but bright future ahead of him. Already an absolute star, and once they're full, they're full and healthy, they're going to make a real push to the finals. I've said that a couple times, but I know their midfield will pull through. Grundy's an absolute star. They could get it done this week, but I'm staying with the Hawks.
Yeah, I'm going Collingwood. I'm just looking at it now. I think Hawthorn's won 4 of the last 5 against Collingwood, so that's something that could be taken into account. But I yeah, I think Collingwood will just outclass them in a bit, but it won't be a blowout at least, I don't think.
12:35 on a Saturday, an early game. The Mighty Saints versus the Dockers, and Nat Fyfe will play. It's obvious who I'm tipping. Can't tip against your team. A fresh climate, new atmosphere for the Saints, though, but I think they can get over the line. Also, Zave, my unexpected headline looks good right about now. Maxi King, if he continues with his good form, he could get some rising star votes.
Yeah, I think even with, especially with Rao out, with the injured shoulder, obviously, I think King perhaps could get a few votes, and he played well against Carlton the other night, so I think looking good for him. But I'd tip St Kilda as well. I think Fremantle's depth isn't that good, and obviously Nat Fyfe has missed a few games, so he'll be a bit ginger still, a bit rusty.
Yeah,
Sorry, Darcy, I just wanted to ask you a quick question. Do you think the hype behind the Saints is fake, or have you been impressed with their form?
Look, I don't see Saints making a big run the finals. I might make prelim if they're lucky, but I do see them going out first or second round, finishing around 6th or 7th at the end of the season. I just reckon, I don't know, you've got a good team, but there's just a bit of lack of experience and sort of, I don't know, big games that they're playing, I guess. So I don't reckon they'll be able to stand up.
Yeah, I 100% agree, Darcy. I think St Kilda lack a bit of star power. Obviously, they've got some good players, but they don't quite have an elite player like a Cripps or a Grundy or a Bontempelli, those type of players. Obviously, Hanbury's injured again. That's not good for them. They're still young, but I think a lot of the people that they brought in the off-season as well were a little bit overrated. I don't think Dougal Howard's as good as some people say. Obviously, Paddy Ryder's been dropped, but I will say Bradley Hill's been very good for them. However, he is old, but Dan Butler has been very, very good this season and perhaps one of the most improved players in the league.
We'll move on from the Saints. West Coast versus Adelaide. It's kind of obvious who I'm tipping. I've been bagging the Crows, and I still think, they're not really up to standards. So I've got the Eagles. As you said before, that 2018 preseason article was really interesting to see what they cooked up for the players. Just harsh treatment, and it's really reflected on their culture, as you said, Das. So yeah, I think the Eagles are going to comfortably win, and I think is it played at Metricon or the Gabba? I think the Gabba. So yeah, I think even though it's a bit of a weird place to play, obviously with the coronavirus, I think the Eagles can get over the line.
Yeah, I'm going to tip the Eagles as well. Obviously, I'm really disappointed with how Adelaide's played this year. I thought last week was a must-win for them. I saw a meme on Instagram. It was a photo of Nat Fyfe, and it was like, Adelaide's so bad they lost to the team when the whole team wasn't even playing. So I think they lost to Fremantle without Fyfe, and that's probably a hard thing to do for even the worst of teams. So I can't see them getting getting on top of the West Coast.
Yeah, I reckon Adelaide could turn around this season. Probably not make finals, but I reckon they need to make a few big moves. Dropping Taylor Walker would be the first one. He was terrible last week. But just, I don't know, being a bit bold with the selection decisions and, I don't know, dropping players that aren't performing, bringing in young players, give them a go, see how it all works out. I definitely don't see them winning this week against West Coast, but I reckon Adelaide can turn around soon.
You see, I was a bit optimistic like you, Darcy, but after they lost to Fremantle last week, I can't see them winning almost any games this year, and I think they'll win the wooden spoon now. I was hopeful last week, and I did tip them, but after that loss, I can't see them winning many games at all.
I might be a bit harsh here, but I think it was absolutely ridiculous that they dropped Matt Crouch ahead of Tex Walker and a few
100%. I think Matt Crouch is obviously, I've said it before on this podcast, he's obviously a great player, and he was All-Australian a few years ago, won their best and fairest in the same year. He finds the ball so well, almost better than any player in the comp. So I think, as I said before, he's welcome at Carlton if he wants to come.
Not Taylor Walker is a crazy call.
The next game on the Saturday night, I think, we've got Melbourne versus Gold Coast, and I'm tipping Gold Coast, even without Rao, they're the better team. Melbourne should be 0-5. The only win they've had was one where they were clinging to a 1 point lead and somehow managed to hold it against your Blue Baggers, Dave. But
Unfortunately.
yeah, but I've got the Suns winning this one, and I think pretty easily. Is that a bit?
Yeah, I disagree with you, Dylan. I'm going to tip Melbourne. I think, obviously, as I said before, I think they were better than perhaps the scoreboard showed last week against Richmond. They obviously beat Carlton, but I think their list is quite talented, actually. I think they've got Petrarca, Viney, Oliver, Gawn, Stephen May and Jake Lever in the back, Tom McDonald in the front. Yeah, I can see them winning. I think probably one of the more talented lists in the league, but they just haven't been able to put it onto the scoreboard and onto wins. So
I've gone Gold Coast this week. I'd like to see, with Rao being out, I like to see them bring Fiorini back in. I really liked him last season. So I reckon Gold Coast can get up. They've got a few young stars that'll outmatch Melbourne and
Yeah, absolutely.
Fiorini is one of my favourite players in the league. He's a bit of an unknown player, but I think he was very good last year, very good at the start of his career, and was good for my super coach a few years back. So one of my favourite players.
I'm a bit optimistic on this topic, but I'm hoping that Ben King comes to the Saints in the near future. He's already proven that he's got huge potential, and last week he backed it up with 3 goals, I think. And also for the D's, I think Clayton Oliver, a very good player, but his ball usage is somewhat questionable sometimes. That's all I'm going to say on that. But hopefully this week he plays well and proves me wrong.
Yeah, just on the King boys, I thought that Ben King would most definitely come to St Kilda in this off-season after it was rumoured that he requested a trade in the previous year. But obviously he signed the new contract with Gold Coast, so it'll be interesting to see if he can get the trade done or what happens. But I was listening to Matthew Lloyd, and he said it's almost who coached them, both boys at Haileybury, and he said it's almost a certainty that they'll end up playing on the same team, but it depends which team it is, whether it be Gold Coast or St Kilda. But my tip would definitely be St Kilda, considering both of them, when they were growing up, went for St Kilda. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
I just reckon, think about the forward line. You're having they're probably both around 200 centimetres. If you're having 2 of them in there, 2 key forwards, you got to not be sort of getting in the way of anyone, I guess. And I think Gold Coast has got a pretty young forward line that needs 2 bigs like that. So I reckon Gold Coast will work really hard to try and get Max King up there.
I think the 2 big tolls for St Kilda could definitely work, though. Obviously, in recent years, they've gotten rid of Rewalt, retired, Bruce has gone to the Dogs, and Paddy McCartan has retired. So I think, obviously, they need some pressure around with the 2 big tolls, but they've brought in Dan Butler and a few others which can help. And I think they're not quite the usual tall 200-centimetre forward that you normally see, because I've seen Max King pick the ball up off the ground and kick goals from there. And I think both of them are special and athletically gifted, so I can see them both working together.
We'll move on. North Melbourne versus Essendon Darcy. I've tipped the Dons, but they're a bit of a weird team, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Kangas did manage to get over the line this week. But yeah, they're a weird team. They beat Collingwood, lose to the mighty Blue Baggers, but I think they'll get over the line this week.
Yeah, I've got North getting out this week. I just see some of our younger blokes who haven't really been performing the last few weeks stepping up. Like, I don't know, I like to see Taron Thomas, Trent Dumont, some of those blokes stepping up, having a good game. I reckon they'll just pull us over the line against Essendon.
Yeah, I'm going to tip Essendon. I think, as I've said before, I think North Melbourne's one of the worst lists in the league, but I think obviously they've done pretty well and they've overperformed, in my opinion, almost every year. But it's hard to tip them just based off their list. But yeah, good on them. Keep winning games, I guess.
Now, the next game, I realised I've forgotten a tip, so this is just straight off the bat. Port Adelaide versus GWS. I'm going to tip Port Adelaide. If it was at Giants Stadium, I'd go with the Giants, but up at Metricon, I think Port will manage to pull through. They've had some really, standout players. Charlie Dixon, as of late, he's been good for them.
Other than when he got shut down by the boy Harris.
That's true, but I didn't watch last week, so I can't really judge off that. But I think Port will manage to get over the line in a close one, in a very close one.
I've got GWS winning. I said before, they're one of the better teams in the comp, if not the best. And I think Port Adelaide's a bit overrated. I think they got a bit of a wake-up call last week, getting absolutely smash, or not absolutely smash, but getting a fair beat down from Brisbane. So I've got GWS winning. A tough draw for them versus the two best teams in the league in back-to-back weeks. So, yeah.
I've got Port Adelaide win this one. I just see bigger bodies nearly. I just see them beating them. GWS is a very good side, but I just reckon Port Adelaide get over top. Just quickly, how do you reckon that Metricon Stadium is going to hold up having 4 games in 2 days? Do we reckon that'll hold up pretty well, or will it be a bit scrappy by the Carlton Bulldogs game?
I think it'll be interesting, actually. I didn't realise that there were 4 games in 2 days, but obviously that's not a common thing that will happen, and maybe the ground will be a bit more scratched up than usual, but I think there's good ground staff going around in today's era, so hopefully they can hold it together pretty well.
Yeah, they'll have time, I think, to fix up the field. Obviously, the Saints game's early at 12:30, and then the night game with North at 7:40. So in between, they'll get the water out, and I don't know what else they do, but they'll fix it up. And I think by the end of the week, it could be in, a stable condition. Should be a good game, that last one. We'll get to that.
I reckon that Metricon, I don't know, it'll definitely cop a beating over the next few weeks, and especially in a couple of weeks' time when they're talking about doing playing, 14 days in a row of matches.
Mm-hmm.
Say a third of them are at Metricon, then it's going to get really scratched up. There's not going to have much time to recover for that one. So that could start affecting games later in the season. So we'll see.
Yeah, just looking ahead, they've got 2 games next week at Metricon, so only half of this week. Actually, there might be a bit more this week, and then 4, maybe not. The next game, Richmond versus Sydney. I've tipped Sydney. As I stated before, I don't think Richmond will be able to hold their own interstate, rather. I know Zave's against the Tigers as well. What's your opinion on their interstate struggle, Darcy?
Look, I just reckon, I don't know, Richmond's just a very good side. I see them getting up no matter what team gets out in the field against Sydney. They're just a really good side, and I don't know, it'll affect them. I don't know if it'll affect them this week, but long term, yes, the players not going up and their injuries will affect them more. But I just see them getting up this week, to be honest.
I've said before, obviously, not a big Richmond fan, and I was going to tip Sydney no matter what, but I think Sydney's a bit of a lock, in my opinion. Obviously, Richmond are missing, as I said before, Edwards, Hawley, Lynch, Cochin, Prestia, Nankervis, and Asbury. So it's going to be a difficult challenge for them, and I'd expect some of Sydney's senior players to stand up in Luke Parker and Josh Kennedy. I can see them both having big games.
Now, the next game, I just changed my tip earlier today to the Western Bulldogs. I was going to tip the Blues, but I didn't have it in me all the way. So I think the Bulldogs will get over the line. This is only the second time I've tipped them this year. As you know, Zave, I was heavily against them earlier in the year. But I don't like the Bulldogs, the Blues inconsistency. They lose to Melbourne and St Kilda, and then they beat Geelong versus Essendon. So they'll need to sort out a few things there. But they could get it done. I just don't have it in me to tip them.
Yeah, I'm going to tip the Blues. It's the second time you've picked the Dogs. It's the second time I've picked the Blues. I don't think Western Bulldogs are that good, and I think perhaps they've been in good form over the last few weeks, but I think Carlton can get up. I think if we can hold Bontempelli to similar stats and similar effect to what he was held to last week, I think we can win. Obviously, Bontempelli is one of my favourite players, but Carlton's my favourite team, and as I said last week, trying to just take a little bit of inspiration from Eddie Betts and believe a little bit more in our club. So, go Blues.
Do we know if Norden's back in this week?
I'm not sure. I don't think it's out yet, but I don't think
early Saturday, I think, or late Friday. So,
if Norden's back in, I reckon that'll cause a few more problems for Carlton's defence, having Bruce in very good form, as well as Norton out there running around. So if Norton's in, I reckon I'll go to the Dogs there. I'll probably change my tip. But at the moment, I'm going Carlton. I just see them getting on top of the Dogs in the midfield and just giving their forwards the best opportunity to score as much as they can.
So a good week of games. Anything else to say, boys?
I've got a few other things to say. First of all, I want to give a shout out to Hugh McCluggage. I forgot to talk about him when I was talking about Brisbane, but he's been very, very, very good over the last few weeks and is well on track to becoming an All-Australian this year. Also, Andrew Brayshaw, he had a very, very, very good game last week and wanted to give a shout out to him. There were Charlie Cameron rumours over the last week about him perhaps not having a new contract with a new contract that he likes with Brisbane and looking to see a trade to either North Melbourne or Carlton. Obviously, that's the team you go for, Darcy, and the team I go for. What do you think about that?
North Melbourne can't land a big fish no matter how hard we try. We offer them tens of millions of dollars, but they just don't come. Honestly, I don't see North getting anyone on $1 million a year contract in the next 10 years at least. We're just not good enough for it.
I see Carlton being able to land a big fish. I think we've got lots and lots of money to spend, money to burn, money burning a hole in our pockets. But we've got a history of landing big fish as well, dating back all the way to Ron Barassi and then as recently as like Chris Judd. But I don't think Charlie Cameron, I think he'll be able to get a deal done with Brisbane and want to stay there, I think. But I do see Carlton picking up some big fish somewhere, whether it be like a Josh Kelly or a Marcus Bontempelli. I think a young absolute star will come to Carlton on a big contract. Like I said in my my unseen or the
unexpected headline.
Yeah, unexpected headline.
You'd rather them land a big fish than all these GWS second best players that Silvani got across.
I think some of them are going to be all right. I think Matt Kennedy, he's got a lot of promise. He was a top 20 pick and absolute bull. He's one of my favourite players going around. He's very hard, a great tackler. Wait, pause.
He's
a great player, and I think Setterfield, obviously he's been good in the last. Setterfield's been very good in the last few weeks, but Caleb Marchbank also an absolute gun, and just struggled with injury over the last few years. But if he can get fit, I think he can be an absolute star of the league, and I think he's got Australian potential.
Speaking of Australian potential. Earlier when you were talking about that meme you saw about Fife being Frere's whole team, I reckon a lot of people are sleeping on Michael Walters. He's been killing recently.
Yeah, I think, he kicked like 50 goals or something last year and was an All-Australian.
Yeah, he's going to be All-Australian again this year. He's been playing really well. And I reckon him and Fife, they might actually be able to scrap a few more games.
Yeah, I think last week he was well held in the first quarter and he got like 18 Supercoach, but he came back big in the second half and ended up scoring 90-something, which was good for my Supercoach since I traded Dustin Martin for Michael Walters. Hashtag no Richmond players in your Supercoach 2020.
Did you trade out Fife this week?
I haven't had Fife for a while, so
okay.
I didn't start him, which was, I guess, a good call of mine, not having to waste a trade getting him out with the hamstring. There was one other thing that I wanted to say. I think in the NFL, obviously Patrick Mahomes has signed one of the biggest contracts in sporting history and had a quick game to play with you. I thought Colin Cowherd did this on his show, and I want to give you a few names in a few different sports and see if you guys think that it would be suitable for them to sign a 10-year deal. I want to start with Zion Williamson. Dylan, obviously you're a big basketball fan. Do you reckon New Orleans could sign him to a 10-year deal? If obviously this was possible in the sporting.
Nope, not 10 years, maybe an extra 3 and then maybe from there. But he hasn't. I know he's shown he's a gun, obviously, but I just don't think he has. This is a tough call, actually. But, his durability and he's got a lot of potential. But I think they can make that call in 2 or 3 more years, although he might want to leave. But, yeah.
I 100% agree with you, Dylan. If obviously he can prove that he is a durable player, then he can prove that he's worth a 10-year contract. But at the moment, I wouldn't be giving it to him.
Yeah, with that frame, it's going to be hard to not break down over the next 10 years, to be honest.
The next one is Giannis. Obviously, he's proven himself. He's won an MVP. What do you guys think?
I'd give him 10 years if it meant he was 34 at the end of it. But if he's any older than that, no.
I'd give him 10 years as well. If I was Milwaukee, I'd be locking him away as soon as possible.
I'd give him 10 years too.
Onto the AFL. Would you give Marcus Bontempelli a 10-year contract?
No, not 10 years. I don't think he's worth 10 years. Oh,
Dylan, wash your mouth out. One of the best players in the league, going to win 10 Brownlows in the next 10 years. Lock him away.
I do
Next
like
one,
the. I
Josh
feel
Kelly.
like. Sorry, I just want to say, I feel like a lot of the viewers think I'm opposed to the Bond. I do like him. I just don't think he's not overrated, but I don't know. It's a tough one. He could get 10-year contract, and I wouldn't be surprised, but I personally wouldn't. Wouldn't. Yeah, I
I
don't
think
know.
Josh Kelly signed a 7-year contract. It was a 2-year contract with a 5-year kicker, I think. So at the end of the 2 years, he can decide whether he wants to sign on for the extra 5 years or he can try and renegotiate a different contract elsewhere. Would you give him the extra 3 years and make it a 10-year contract?
I think 10-year contract is just too much of an investment. You look at what happened to Buddy Franklin. I don't know how long that contract was. Might have been 8 years. I can't remember. But it's just too big an investment. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. They might do both ACLs in the second season. You got 8 left of the contract that you got to pay
Obviously,
out.
Josh Kelly is one of my favourite players. I think he's a top 10 player in the league, but obviously he's been injured a few times over the last few years, so I wouldn't quite sign him. Two of the Carlton boys, Paddy Cripps and Sam Walsh. Would you lock either of them away?
I'd lock Cripps.
Yeah, maybe Cribs, but I wouldn't do Walsh yet. He hasn't proven himself enough for me.
As a Carlton fan, with the money to burn, I'd lock them away early. I reckon we could front end their contract a fair bit with all of the money that we got to spend. And I think perhaps in the 7th, 8th, 9th, maybe even 10th year, we wouldn't even be paying them because we would have paid them earlier. But I think both of them are going to be absolute guns in the future no matter what happens. So I'd give them the contract. The young boy, Matt Rao, would you give him a 10-year contract?
Yeah,
No.
I would.
Just on his shoulder. You don't know how he's going to come back after this.
That's true, yeah.
I wouldn't either. I think obviously his first few games have been incredible, but I wouldn't quite give him a 10-year contract.
I'd lock him, but with an injury, you can't really count on that until he's come back and proved himself again.
Yeah,
I think Matt Rao's a bit like Zion at the current stage, so yeah, I'll agree with you. Not yet, but
he's only played 3 or 4 really good games at the moment, so I think we might be getting ahead of ourselves a little bit if we're giving him a 10-year contract. But
yeah, no,
I think
not
he
yet,
could be
not
a
yet.
star and give him a bit more time. Just wait and see.
All right. So that just about wraps it up. Thanks for joining us, Darcy. I hope you enjoyed it. Long 35 minutes, but the NBA is coming back very soon, so we'll talk about that. We'll get the shooting guards and the point guards podcasts out for you in the next 2 weeks. Shout out to J.R. Smith and Jamal Crawford for being signed.
And Michael Beasley.
And Michael Beasley as well. The Nets, they're kind of just hunting for anyone at the moment. But
they'll be signing anyone they can with the 7 players or 8 players that are said they're not coming to the bubble. So.
Bruce Levert show, here we go.
Yeah, I think that was something that I wanted to say. If we were going to have another basketball one before the season started, I think if I was a betting man, I'd be putting money on Karis LeVert averaging 25 or more because it's going to be one of their only options. And I think I've read it down somewhere. He's averaging 32 points per 36 minutes when one or both Kyrie and Spencer Dinwiddie don't play. So
yeah, he just needs
more than 25 for sure.
Yeah, he just needs the spotlight, I think.
Yeah, just a bit more touches for him, and I think he could be a star.
Thanks for coming on, Darcy. We'll definitely have you back sometime, whether it's NBA or AFL. Zave, just another one in the books for us. We'll get some more out in the next few weeks, and that wraps it up from me. Anything else to say?
Nothing from me.
Darcy?
Oh, good. Cheers, boys.
Goodbye. Catch you later.